We're here in the home of Jay and Jackie Roberts to look at their brand new diorama of the Battle of Morristown, Missouri, which they have been working on most of the winter, and we're going to ask them to tell us a little bit about the process they went through to make this diorama, their very first ever. So Jay, what gave you the idea, what was your motivation to do this whole project?
Well, my motivation stems primarily from my great-great-grandfather, who was actually a captain at the time of the Battle of Morristown, although he wasn't present with his company, but it stemmed an interest in that battle. And of course it was also one of the first, it probably was the first major battle in Cass County, which has a lot of historical impact on the county at that time.
How close was this actual town to the border with Kansas?
Approximately 4 miles, I believe.
Okay, so when you got interested in doing this, what did you have to do to make this diorama come to life? What was your first, what did you make first?
Well, you have to start out by from scratch. You have to have a base, which I used just a 5-inch sheet of plywood and reinforced it with 2x4s on the bottom to make it rigid. The first thing you have to do is do your research. I went out to Morristown and actually surveyed the terrain where the battle took place, how the creek intersected the river.
Let's look at that creek that you made and talk about that a little bit. So you've got to have a creek, so how did you go about laying that out and making that?
Well, I didn't do that at first. The first thing I had to do was form the elevation because of the bluff, because I knew the Confederates took refuge on the bluffs, and that's a primary function of this diorama, to show that.
Okay.
Where the Confederates actually took refuge.
What's the name of this creek?
Well, this is a little tributary running into the Grand River.
Okay.
The Grand River flows through where the mill is.
Okay.
But it's right below the bluff. There's a little creek that runs right into it, and I don't know the name of it. It's just a watershed.
Now, how'd you make the elevation?
I built that up with a newspaper. Started out just wadding up newspaper and then strapping it down with tape and strips of file folders, and just kept building it up. And the upper part of the diorama actually has a piece of foam, pink foam I call it. It's about a 1/2 inch foam, and that's also a base for this bottom also. And from there I laid out strips of plaster cloth across the whole diorama, and my wife etched out the river itself and sealed it real good before we put the water on it.
Now, you made by hand each one of these little buildings, correct? And you did a lot of research, so you knew which buildings would have been there?
Yes. I put the owner of the mill, J.C. Morris, who the town was named after, his house would have been pretty close, so I put it at the end of town. I also knew from a newspaper article from John Edberry that the saloon was at the top of the bluff, so I knew the saloon had to be right there. We knew by a diary that there was a 1-brick structure in town, and I am taking a liberty to find out we assume this is where it was located. Now we know where the Morristown Hotel was located, at the corner of Church Street and the Morristown Road, or the main street of Morristown.
And that Morristown Road goes all the way into Harrisonville.
That is the Morristown to Harrisonville Road, yes. The church is actually located farther down Church Road, but we abbreviated it for space and brought it into town. The school over here is in the actual place where the school was. We know that. We knew that Guthrie had a store in town, and it was a general merchandising store and possibly a post office, so we put it next to the hotel. And then we knew that we had a doctor and a shoemaker that were located in town, so we put it right next to the hotel. This would be the blacksmith shop and carriage house for the hotel, and a corral for the hotel's horses.
So how long did you work on this project?
My guess, yeah, I think it was probably around Christmas. I got the idea and got started, but long is just building the terrain. Once you get the terrain right, then the rest of it kind of fits into place. I already had a map of the streets, and we laid those out first, and then we went from there. We knew the orchard, where the orchard was. Apple orchard was right where it is today. It's still standing on that property. And we also knew that there were 2 water wells. I put this one near the apple orchard, not knowing where they are right now. They've probably been covered up, and there's also out there now a huge lake, so it could be spring fed from one of those springs.
Now, when a person were interested in seeing this diorama, where will it be on permanent display?
Towards the end of this month, it will be on display permanently at the Historical Society in Cass County, and that's in the library.
The Burnt District Museum?
The Burnt District Museum in Harrisonville.
Yeah, 400 East Mechanic, Harrisonville. Very professional. And I understand you're even going to have sound with it.
Yes.
That's the next step.
That's the
and
next
the final step before it is ready for vision.
Well, we can't thank you enough for all the hard work you've done, and it's just a beautiful depiction of a little known but important event in western Missouri, western Cass County. So thanks so much.
You're welcome.